this is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.
It's an Olympics you'll never forget. Prime time in Milan. The moments.
Chloe Kim with the gold medal flex.
The stars.
Ilya Malinin.
Out of this world.
The spectacle from beautiful northern Italy with very special guests every night of the Olympics. Experience the world's biggest show. Prime time in Milan, tonight 8/7 Central on NBC and Peacock.
Why have I asked my electrician I found on Angie.com to bury my pet hamster Nibbles in our yard for me? Because I was so moved by how carefully he buried my electrical wires, I knew I could trust him to bury my sweet Nibbles after his untimely end. Nibbles, gone too soon. May he scurry in peace.
Hey, sorry about your pet, but I just wire stuff.
Nibbles would have loved you like a brother.
Connecting homeowners with skilled pros for over 30 years. Angie, the one you trust to find the ones you trust. Find pros for all your home projects at Angie.com.
The big game commercials are basically must-see TV. This year, Elf Cosmetics went all out with an absurdly funny telenovela called Melissa. It stars Melissa McCarthy, Nicholas Gonzalez, Itati Cantoral, and Elf Glow Reviver Lip Oil. The Elf Glow Reviver Lip Oil is an ultra-glossy tinted lip oil that nourishes, hydrates, and enhances your lips' natural color.
Watch the full episode of their new Elf novela on soyunbaño.com.
Well, the holidays have come and gone once again, but if you've forgotten to get that special someone in your life a gift, well, Mint Mobile is extending their holiday offer of half off unlimited wireless. So here's the idea. You get it now, you call it an early present for next year. What do you have to lose? Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Limited time 50% off regular price for new customers. Upfront payment required. $45 for 3 months, $90 for 6 months, or $180 for 12-month plan. Taxes and fees extra. Speeds may slow after 50 gigabytes per month when network is busy. See terms.
How do you make chicken nuggets like 7,000% better? Short answer, you let Taco Bell make them. Long answer, start with all white meat chicken nuggets, bread them in crunchy tortilla chips, and serve them with Hidden Valley Diablo Ranch. Yep, that's Hidden Valley Ranch mixed with Taco Bell Diablo sauce. It's exactly what it sounds like, and somehow even better. Simple math, spicy results. Crispy chicken nuggets from Taco Bell. A brand new classic. At participating U.S. Taco Bell locations for a limited time only, while supplies last.
Welcome to One Thing Trump Did, available exclusively on the Middle podcast feed. I'm Jeremy Hobson, and as you know, every week on this show, we pick just one thing that's coming out of the Trump White House and break it down in a nonpartisan way with someone who knows what they're talking about. And our one thing this week is a big one. It's the Epstein files, but we are just going to bite off a tiny little piece of the story, which is what might happen in Congress with regards to the Epstein files now that there is growing bipartisan support to release the files to the public. Now, if you haven't been following this, the backstory is this. President Trump promised more transparency on this issue and that the files related to the late convicted pedophile financier, Jeffrey Epstein, would be declassified. But after the Trump Justice Department released what it called the first phase of the declassified files earlier this year, the president told his supporters to move on and called the whole thing a hoax.
I know it's a hoax. It's started by Democrats. It's been run by the Democrats for 4 years. You had Christopher Wray and these characters and Comey before him. And it's a bad group. It started, actually, look at the Steele dossier that turned out to be a total hoax. The 51 agents, the intelligence, so-called intelligence agents, it was a hoax. It's all been a big hoax. It's perpetrated by the Democrats. And some stupid Republicans and foolish Republicans fall into the net. And so they try and do the Democrats' work.
Trump was friends with Jeffrey Epstein for years, and there are questions about whether the president's name might be in the files or on a client list, which the government says does not exist. So a lot to unpack here. Let's bring in our guest in this episode, Mia McCarthy, congressional reporter for Politico. Mia, it's great to have you here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So before the president was calling this a hoax, this was a big story, especially on the political right. Why? What were people looking for here?
Yeah, I think especially, within a lot of the Republican Party, there was an interest in the Epstein files as a whole separate political class, that had this whole underground network of conspiracies, of these different things that are happening. And I think a lot of Trump's base really resonated with that, kind of that QAnon conspiracy theorist aspect of it. And, so for them, the fact that the files were not getting released, this was something that was really important to them. And I think we saw Trump really hone in on that within the 2024 campaign. And now we're kind of seeing a big shift in that.
And these people that were convinced that there was something here, they thought that there would be a lot of Democrats or people on the left who were involved in whatever Jeffrey Epstein was doing?
Yeah, and I don't even necessarily think they were going at this just in the way of exposing Democrats. I think a lot of them did believe that Democrats were a big part of this and that, a lot of these other people like Bill Clinton were friends with him and that this would expose that aspect of it. But I think on a deeper level, for a lot of these people, this represented the kind of political class that they wanted to tear down and something that made Trump really attractive to them, right? Because he was so different than the typical politician. So I think finding the typical politician, quote unquote, attached to a lot of the things in Epstein's files would break through a lot of what they had seen as a lot from these political people.
And so the attorney general under President Trump, Pam Bondi, said she had a client list on her desk. She said that earlier this year, like a list of the people that would have been, paying for, I guess, sex with minors via Jeffrey Epstein, a client list. Now she says there's no client list. What do we know about that?
Yeah, obviously there's been a lot of confusion back and forth there. I cover Capitol Hill, and this issue is something that has resonated with a lot of Republicans, but we see that on Capitol Hill with a lot of these Republicans who, are telling people privately that they are confused and concerned by this, right? So I think, that obviously was a confusing move, and I think definitely heightened a lot of concern for some of these Republicans, especially people like Thomas Massie, who's leading this discharge petition to try to get more transparency on these Epstein files that were apparently on Pam Bondi's desk.
So what about the files that have already been released? A lot of members of Congress were very upset that they weren't really very new. They didn't have anything new in them that wasn't already out there. Did those files have anything important in them at all?
Yeah, the majority of what's been released so far has been stuff that had kind of already been known. Obviously, early on, there were some of the things like the birthday letter from Trump in Epstein's birthday book. And there were some other things that we had heard about, but now we're seeing actual pictures of. But the majority of the content in here, a lot of it was not new. And a lot of Republicans on the Hill and Democrats now, too, who see this as a politically beneficial topic for them. For a lot of them, they were a little underwhelmed by what was released.
What do we know about the files that have not been released? When we talk about the Epstein files, who has them right now?
Yeah, and I think that's a big question, right? And it leaves a lot of room for people to, imagine what else could be out there because they're releasing these documents, but it's what's already been released. And, people have talked about there possibly being more, but it's hard to say. We don't know exactly what's out there versus what's not. A lot of information obviously is retracted, and some of that is to protect the victims, of course. But there are people on the Capitol Hill who are really pushing to have, all of the files that are related to this to be just completely sent out because that has not been required yet.
Well, and one of the people that wants everything to be released is one of the president's strongest supporters. That's Georgia Republican Marjorie Taylor Greene, who had a press conference with some of Epstein's victims and said this earlier this month.
I think it's important to put yourself in these women's shoes. As you're questioning, why can't they just name the names? These are some of the richest, most powerful people in the world that could sue these women into poverty and homelessness. Yeah, it's a scary thing to name names, but I will tell you, I'm not afraid to name names. And so if they want to give me a list, I will walk in that Capitol on the House floor and I'll say every damn name that abused these women. I can do that for them.
Mia, how is the White House handling this? I guess you would call it an uprising on the right from Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert, Thomas Massie, and Nancy Mace.
It's safe to say that there's been a pretty serious pressure campaign behind the scenes. Thomas Massie at least has said that he has heard from the people who have signed on to his discharge petition, that they've heard from senior White House officials early on. And in the past week, we've heard that has kind of ramped up again after things focused a little bit more on the government shutdown. But as Congress prepares to come back, hopefully to avoid a shutdown, but as they prepare for when they're going to be back for legislative sessions, there is this question of they're going to reach 218. And I think a lot of White House officials and a lot of senior House Republican officials are also, really trying to pressure these people to take their names off of these three women, Nancy Mace, Lauren Boebert, and Marjorie Taylor Greene, to take their names off of this discharge petition.
Well, stay with us because in a moment we're going to talk about what some members of Congress are trying to do to get these files released and that vote that you just mentioned. One thing Trump did with Politico congressional reporter Mia McCarthy. Will be right back.
Olympics you'll never forget. Prime time in Milan. The moments.
Chloe Kim with the gold medal flex.
The stars.
Ilya Malinin.
Out of this world.
The spectacle from beautiful northern Italy with very special guests every night of the Olympics. Experience the world's biggest show. Prime time in Milan. Tonight, 8/7 Central on NBC and Peacock.
Why have I asked my HVAC guy I found on Angie.com to change my grandpa's trachea tube? Because I was so amazed by how quickly he replaced our air ducts. I knew I could trust him to change Pop-Pop's tube while I was on vacation.
Make it quick, young man.
Aw, see? Pop-Pop trusts you.
I think we should call a doctor.
Connecting homeowners with skilled pros for over 30 years. Angie, the one you trust to find the ones you trust. Find pros for all your home projects at Angie.com.
Ever wonder why so many people regain weight after stopping a GLP-1? Up to 40% of the weight lost can come from lean muscle. This weakens the body, slows metabolism, and makes it easier to put the pounds back on, creating a cycle of dependency. Prolon's 5-day fasting-mimicking diet offers a drug-free way to maintain results and support long-term metabolic health. In just 5 days, it activates fasting pathways to burn fat, protect muscle, and rejuvenate cells, all while letting you enjoy real food. Get 15% off plus a $40 bonus gift when you subscribe at prolonlife.com/iHeart. That's prolonlife.com/iHeart.
You see it instantly. It's Coldwater Creek, the mark of exceptional workmanship and signature touches inspired by a Mountain West heritage. Distinctive styles created from quality fabrics, silhouettes perfected with just the right drape, feel-good fits offering ease of movement, and thoughtful details to elevate your look. Coldwater Creek's authenticity is embodied in every piece, embracing its confident spirit that carries through to today. Discover Coldwater Creek clothing, designed to fit your life the way you want. For a wardrobe you can count on season after season, visit coldwatercreek.com. Shop the new spring collection at 20% off $75 or more with code IHEART20.
Welcome to the A Building. I'm Hans Charles.
I'm Menelik Lumumba. It's 1969. Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. had both been assassinated, and Black America was at a breaking point. Rioting and protests broke out on an unprecedented scale.
In Atlanta, Georgia, at Martin's alma mater, Morehouse College, the students had their own protest. It featured two prominent figures in Black history, Martin Luther King Sr. and a young student, Samuel L. Jackson.
To be in what we really thought was a revolution. I mean, people were dying.
1968, the murder of Dr. King, which traumatized everyone.
The FBI had a role in the murder of a Black Panther leader in Chicago.
This story is about protest. It echoes in today's world far more than it should, and it will blow your mind.
Listen to the A Building on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome back to One Thing Trump Did exclusively on the Middle podcast feed. I'm Jeremy Hobson. We're talking about the Epstein files, and I'm joined by Politico Congress reporter Mia McCarthy. Mia, Take us back to earlier in the summer when the members wanted a vote on releasing the Epstein files, and then rather than give it to them, Speaker Mike Johnson, a very close ally of the president, adjourned the House of Representatives. Why?
Yeah, it was definitely a tense moment. I was up there on the Hill. They had left, I want to say, about a week and a half early. Basically, there was language that was killing this effort to try to force a vote on the Epstein files within this procedural vote that basically sets the time of debate for all the other bills in the week. Now, a bunch of Republicans, even those who weren't necessarily supporting Thomas Massie's effort, didn't like the idea that, that was being tampered with in here. So basically, the rule was not they did not end up passing this rule that set up the rest of the week's schedule. And as they kind of stood at a standstill to figure out how to go forward, there was I believe, 4-week recess coming right up before then. So he basically just sent the House home. I think the thought process here was they were hoping that this issue, a lot of the pressure on this issue, a lot of tension around it would die down a little bit by the time they got back in September. But, we're back and obviously we're still seeing it pretty much in focus.
Yeah, if you were to rate it, in terms of how hot this issue is, how hot it was then and how hot it was now, between 1 and 10, where would you put it before the break for August and then now?
Yeah, I'd say right before the break was the highest. There's no doubt about that. That being said, it doesn't mean that it's gone down per se. I think it definitely has gotten some momentum, but the peak of it, I'd say, was definitely right before they had left. Granted, it was right around when Trump was posting a lot about it being a hoax and stuff. And so I think that was really building a lot of the momentum onto this issue. Now, when they came back, it was still a big issue that they had to deal with. And the discharge petition is still there. It is one vote right now away from forcing a vote. And so, especially when the House comes back, obviously there's been other issues, honestly, that they've had to deal with, such as government funding, that have detracted away a little bit.
Right.
But once that's sorted out, I think it's really going to come right back into focus.
Well, yeah, and I will say, as somebody who's covered the news for decades now, there's always a sex scandal going on in Washington of some kind, and it doesn't really interest me that much. But this one, because I think it's really because Trump is calling it a hoax and he clearly doesn't want anybody to talk about it, it almost is like, oh, well, maybe there is something there that we should be paying attention to here if he's really that adamant that nobody focus on this. Now, the discharge petition, this is where members can force a vote on something over the objection of the leadership, like Mike Johnson. And as you say, with some of these special elections, they're probably now going to have enough votes to do that. So you think that vote on releasing the Epstein files could happen by the end of this month?
Well, not this month. Most likely mid-October, I'd say, at the earliest. Mm-hmm. So basically, again, this is a tactic that's used most of the time, rare, though more frequently in recent years, to kind of go around leadership to force a vote on an issue. And to do that, you have to have 218 people or the majority sign on, right? So right now they're at 217. There have been 2 special elections in deep blue districts that were happening throughout September. So Thomas Massie, who the Republican leading this effort, he had kind of known that he was going to get to 218 one way or another once he had 3 other Republicans sign on, because the special election that happened at Alita Grijalva, she is expected to be sworn in whenever the House comes back. And once she signs on, then it will have, I believe, a 7-day period to ripen. And then that will force a vote. So we're looking with that timeline, if the House doesn't come back until October 7th, probably roughly around mid-October.
Mm-hmm. And then even if it passes the House, then there's the Senate. And I want you to listen here to Louisiana Republican Senator John Kennedy pressing the FBI Director Kash Patel for answers about this in a hearing just earlier this month.
This issue is not going to go away. And I think the central question for the American people is this. They know Epstein trafficked young women for sex to himself. They want to know who, if anyone else, he trafficked these young women to. And that's a very fair question. I want to know that answer. And I think you're going to have to do more to satisfy the American people's understandable curiosity in that regard.
I am not saying that others were not trafficked and others were not involved. What I am telling you is that based on the information we have, and we have continuously and publicly asked for the public to come forward with more information. If there is, we'll look at it. But based on credible information, we have released all credible information, and the information that the Department of Justice and the FBI never releases is information on investigations that are not credible. And we don't release the names of victims who weren't credible.
Mia, what is happening in the Senate, or what might happen in the Senate with this?
Yeah, I think it's interesting in some regards because the Senate has kind of seen less interested overall in this. Obviously, there are members like Senator John Kennedy who are concerned about this and want more to be released. You know, there's always been kind of a joke of the different vibes between the two chambers. The House, you know, is sometimes because you have such a smaller group of people you represent, and, you know, you often, some of these Republicans, their main constituency are people who really care about this, versus senators who represent a whole state. They may not be as in tune to some of these types of issues. That being said, there is definitely some interest, and I think Democrats are willing to try to capitalize on this issue. So we'll see. You know, they've been mostly focused on government funding. They've mostly kind of brushed this issue aside, as they say, like, you know, focus more on the actual legislation. And this is not the type of issue that they would typically get worked up about.
What's the mood about this, just among the Republicans especially, that you're talking to on Capitol Hill?
Yeah, for sure. I'd say, you know, a lot of Republicans are really antsy about this. They're really anxious because this is something that, you know, they've campaigned on, that they've heard from their own constituents, heard their own concerns about it, especially back in July, right before they left for, I believe, a 6-week recess. You know, there were plenty of Republicans who were privately telling me and privately telling others that, you know, they were just getting calls nonstop about this issue, that they were hearing about this from their constituents, and were really concerned about going back home and hearing about this from their constituents, you know, when they were back campaigning or back just working in their districts. Now that we're in September, I mean, again, the focus has shifted a little bit towards government funding, but a lot of these conservative hardliners are definitely concerned about it. They've also told me, though, up front, you know, that they especially, you know, some who are planning to run for higher office and are maybe looking for a Trump endorsement, that they're not planning to sign this discharge petition that Trump has heavily campaigned against. However, this discharge petition just forces a vote. So once it forces the vote on the actual vote on releasing the files, these Republicans have told me they plan to vote in favor of that. So we're going to see plenty of Republicans who didn't sign on to the discharge petition eventually support this overall effort.
Is it possible, I guess the answer is yes, but I'm just going to ask you this question anyway. Is it possible that the files are a big nothing burger, that they release the files and there's just nothing interesting in them?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and you know, and the question is, what does come out of this? Obviously, there's a lot of attention on this plane log book. You know, you had that recording from Congresswoman Green. You know, she plans to, if she can, you know, read that list out on the House floor. Thomas Massie has told me he wants to do the same after hearing that from Congresswoman Green. So that's like the thing I think people are really looking for. We'll see if this discharge petition goes through, if this effort does end up forcing the DOJ to release more files, if that actually is something that will come about.
That is Mia McCarthy, who covers Congress for Politico. Mia, thanks so much for talking with us about this.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
And thanks to you for listening to One Thing Trump Did. It was produced by Harrison Patino. Our next middle episode will be in your podcast feed later this week. We're going to be asking how you feel about Trump's use of the National Guard in cities. And of course, you can rate this podcast and write a nice review wherever you listen to podcasts. Our theme music was composed by Noah Haidu. I'm Jeremy Hobson. Thanks for listening. Talk to you soon.
You see it instantly. It's Coldwater Creek, the mark of exceptional workmanship and signature touches inspired by a Mountain West heritage. Distinctive styles created from quality fabrics, silhouettes perfected with just the right drape, feel-good fits offering ease of movement, and thoughtful details to elevate your look. Coldwater Creek's authenticity is embodied in every piece, embracing its confident spirit that carries through to today. Discover Coldwater Creek clothing, designed to fit your life the way you want. For a wardrobe you can count on season after season, visit coldwatercreek.com. Shop the new spring collection at 20% off $75 or more with code IHEART20.
Over the last couple years, didn't we learn that the folding chair was invented by Black people because of what happened in Alabama?
The Montgomery Brawl.
This Black History Month, the podcast Selective Ignorance with Mandy B unpacks Black history and culture with comedy, clarity, and conversations that shake the status quo. The Crown Act in New York was signed in July of 2019, and that is a bill that was passed to prohibit discrimination based on hairstyles associated with race. To hear this and more, listen to Selective Ignorance with Mandy B from the Black Effect Podcast Network on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
1969. Malcolm and Martin are gone. America is in crisis. And at Morehouse College, the students make their move.
These students, including a young Samuel L. Jackson, locked up the members of the Board of Trustees, including Martin Luther King Sr. It's the true story of protest and rebellion in Black American history that you'll never forget. I'm Hans Charles.
I'm Menelik Lumumba.
Listen to The A Building on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is Ryder Strong, and I have a new podcast called The Red Weather. In 1995, my neighbor, Anna Trainer, disappeared from a commune.
It was nature, and trees, and praying, and drugs.
So no, I am not your guru.
And back then, I lied to everybody.
They have had this case for 30 years.
I'm going back to my hometown to uncover the truth. Listen to The Red Weather on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
14 years in prison for killing a young woman. A 15-year sentence for a crash that caused 3 deaths. 12 and a half years for killing a child and critically injuring her mother. All true stories, all caused by marijuana-impaired drivers. No matter what you tell yourself, if you feel different, you drive different. So, if you're high, just don't drive. Brought to you by NHTSA and the Ad Council.
This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed Human.